14th October 2011 will always be remembered as a Rubicon crossing moment for the Kenyan Defence Forces. On this day, Kenya made history when they crossed the border to Somalia in pursuit of Al-Shabaab terrorists. The terrorists had provoked the Kenyan forces in a series of attacks and disturbing the way of life of the Kenyan people. On 13th October 2011, Al-Shabaab terrorists had kidnapped 2 Spanish women from Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp. In the second such kidnapping in subsequent weeks, the gunmen stormed the private home of a 66-year-old Marie de Dieu on the northern coast island of Manda and abducted her. This was the second kidnapping near the popular tourist town of Lamu in a month. A series of attacks followed in restaurants in Kenya's capital city, Nairobi, and at a bus terminus, subsequently causing injuries and deaths. It was on this context that on October 14, 2011, the Kenya Defence Forces crossed the border into Somalia to launch a military offensive against insurgent group Al-Shabaab. The operation was dubbed Operation Nchi.
We will defend our territorial integrity through all measures necessary to ensure peace and stability. These men and women are protecting our sovereignty. As a country, we should support these brave modern-day heroes.
This was the first ever military operation in a neighboring country since Kenya's independence.
The Kenyan military is presently on the offensive inside Somalia, making inroads into Al-Shabaab strongholds.
A high-powered KDF operation against the Al-Shabaab militia underway in Somalia.
Kenya's intervention was a commitment by the Kenya Defence Forces to protect and defend Kenya's territorial integrity, to secure sovereignty, national interest, as well as secure peace in Somalia and the larger Horn of Africa. At the onset of the entry into Somalia, Kenya advanced the argument of the country's right to self-defense as embodied in Article 51 of the UN Charter, which clearly recognizes the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense in the wake of an armed attack against a member of the UN.
United Nations Charter to remove Al-Shabaab not only from our country, but even closer to our country.
Kenya's onslaught in Somalia led to peace, stability, and liberation of more than 22 towns. To sustain the gains made by the Kenya Defence Forces after a few months in Somalia, the UN and AU invited Kenya to incorporate its forces into African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM.
And for the first time, it authorizes AMISOM to use all necessary means to reduce the threat from Al-Shabaab.
The rehunting of Kenyan troops into African mission in Somalia on February 22, 2012 via the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2036-2012 enabled the Kenyan military to provide capacity building, leadership and mentorship while training the new Somali National Army.
Our mandate in AMISOM is peace enforcement. And peace enforcement entails that you fight for peace.
The African mission in Somalia assigned Kenya Defence Forces troops the Middle Juba and Lower Juba regions that were designed as Sector 2. On January 22, 2012, Kenya Defence Forces liberated Hosingo, but not without resistance from Al-Shabaab.
Over 1,000 Al-Shabaab fighters had planned a massive attack to overrun this base. They attacked in waves. Each wave had about 100 fighters. Fortunately, our ground troops had enough stocks of ammo in their forward trenches that sustained them until when our Kenya Air Force fighter jets arrived on time to complement the ground troops and offer close air support, which saved the day. Over 300 Al-Shabaab were killed, and several of their weapons were recovered and captured during that battle. It is one of the battles that we regard as the most successful defensive operations ever executed after the incursion to Somalia.
The coordinated link-up of ground, air and amphibious troops and the rapid seizure of enemy strong points in Kismayo and its environs affirmed the meticulous planning that preceded the operation, meaning weakening the Al-Shabaab pockets in various towns and eventually capturing their strongholds. On 28 September 2012, under the auspices of AMISOM, the Kenya Defence Forces conducted a complex operation codenamed Operation Sledgehammer. This operation led to the capture of the strategic port city of Kismayo. The operation consisted of a two-pronged assault. One involved an amphibious landing using naval components, the first of its kind in Africa, synchronized with an advance operation by ground troops from Afmado.
The situation in Kismayo is relatively stable. However, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Indeed, the jubilation witnessed upon the announcement of the capture of Kismayo was inspiring and a relief to the residents of the seaport city, which immediately acquired a new lease of life, at least judging from the economic transformation that ensued. Decade into the invasion, and despite the liberation of Kismayo from Al-Shabaab control, there are some lessons from the intervention process. Since the Kenya Defence Forces entered the Somalia theatre, Al-Shabaab activities have significantly reduced, and while this terrorist group remains a threat, its ability to operate has been greatly degraded.
Indeed, Kenyans appreciate the role the Kenya Defence Forces continues to play in the promotion of peace and security within the region and beyond.
As the battlefield evolved, Kenya Defence Forces changed its tactics and approaches in securing area of responsibility. The Kenyan soldiers have learned many enduring lessons, some specific to a given phase of the battle, others with a more universal application. The Kenya Defence Forces has also become adept and bolder in defending its own integrity. The pursuit of peace comes at a price: loss of lives and military equipment, maimed soldiers. This and the future generations will remain indebted to the courage, valor, and patriotism of these gallant heroes, the brave sons and daughters of our motherland. The Kenya Defence Forces also acknowledges the sacrifices of the families of its soldiers and assures them of its commitment to support them. The KDF guarantees them that their sacrifices is not in vain.
The lessons learned from our operations, both in AMISOM and other missions, have informed us of the need to embrace current trends in psychological, physiosocial support for the active personnel and their families.
So the Defence Forces Wellness Center could not have been developed at an appropriate time than now, when our soldiers are actively engaged in combat in the defense of our sovereignty and our territorial integrity. This center is indeed, therefore, a pioneer in providing a one-stop facility for healthcare services unique to the military fraternity in particular and the security personnel in general.
Upon entering the Somalia battlefield, the Kenyan military skillfully employed smarter power to win the hearts and minds of Somalia people at the grassroots. The Kenya Defence Forces has protected civilians in line with the humanitarian intervention principles, conducting humanitarian activities including distribution of relief food, provision of water, rehabilitation and construction of schools, medical facilities, and offering medical assistance to the locals. Besides, the Kenya Defence Forces has trained midwives, empowered women, and built capacity in economic empowerment. The Kenya Defence Forces has facilitated a conducive environment for the voluntary repatriation of refugees back to Somalia. The prevailing peace and tranquility has necessitated the resumption of normalcy, improved economic activities, and nation building.
Wageni kila mahali, sio mahali moja, kila mahali. Wageni wanakuja kama Kenya, kama Somalia, bandi nyingine, kila mahali, kama Europe, wageni mingi yuko hapa.
A major contribution to the quest of peace and stability in Somalia comes from our gallant soldiers, airmen, and sailors. The Kenya Defence Forces has evolved into a world-class military propelled by the values of pure patriotism, professional ethics, love for their country, and for Africa. The experience has enriched and reinforced Kenya Defence Forces' faith in a people-based approach to peace support operations as the surest way to genuinely empower local populations. Degrading the Al-Shabaab has enabled Kenya Defence Forces to restore peace and establish a legal and normative order in Somalia conducive for the protection of human rights. Our troops have routed the Al-Shabaab and curtailed cross-border incursions, terrorism incidences, piracy, robbery at sea, smuggling of contraband goods, human and drugs trafficking along the shores and through the Kenya-Somalia border. Business and tourism have also thrived, and economic fortunes improved in the coastal region of Kenya. The Kenyan public is also seemingly more security conscious of suspicious individuals or activities related to terrorism. Today, as we mark 10 years in Kenya Defence Forces operations in Somalia, we remember and celebrate all our gallant men and women who are serving Kenya at home and in active theaters beyond our borders.
You're warriors, India. Yes, and you really shown it because you're warriors. I know your work. I know how much you've done in these operations. I know the commitment, I know the dedication, and I urge you to continue in the manner that we are doing our job.
The Kenyan people thank you for your patriotism, service, sacrifice, bravery, and dedication.